Apparently, Donald Trump's superpower is forcing the Democrats to take the wrong side of every single issue. And of course, recently, they're on the wrong side of the Maduro capture from Venezuela. And that, of course, is what we're going to see being discussed over here on CNN with Dana Bash and Jim Jordan. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
Fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela, and there's definitely
cozying up to China and Iran, which are part of that, certainly does.
But again, cozying up to China and Iran, talking about what matters on the world stage, is different from what most people who voted for Donald Trump heard him say, which is, I'm going to focus on Americans. I'm going to focus on groceries. I'm going to put American dollars.
And President Trump has done that. President Trump said he'd cut taxes. He did. President Trump said he'd secure the border. He did. President Trump said he'd get men out of women's sports. He did. President Trump has said he'd lower gas prices. He did. President Trump said he'd make sure Iran did get nuclear capability. He did. He did all those things in 1 year's time. That is certainly making America great again. That is certainly consistent with what he said. And getting a bad guy brought to justice who's had a 5-year arrest warrant, that is certainly consistent with that theme and that message as well. So I think the American people appreciate that. And frankly, I think that's the message we go tell the American people in this midterm election. President Trump and Republicans did what we said we would do.
How are they going to feel about the fact that the president, said that America is committed to rebuilding Venezuela, particularly the oil fields, spending money to do that?
Well, again, I think Americans recognize when that country took assets that belong to American companies, that's wrong. That's all President Trump is saying is going to change in the future relative to oil. I think that makes sense. They took property from American companies. That makes sense that there's going to be some kind of compensation, some kind of reckoning for that. I think that's consistent with putting American interests first, which is what President has talked about since he first, came down the escalator 10 years ago.
He explicitly redefined America first in his press conference yesterday. For a long time, again, people thought it meant spending American taxpayer dollars, not on foreign wars, not in foreign countries, but at home. Now he says he's enacting a new strategy where, quote, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. That's a shift in his approach.
That's consistent with the Constitution. That's consistent with the War Powers Act. And most importantly, I think it's consistent with history. You can go James Monroe, Teddy Roosevelt, JFK,
but he
President
never said
Trump
he was
in our
James
hemisphere.
Monroe.
Well, no, I know, but operating in our hemisphere, that is consistent historically, constitutionally with...
But it's not consistent with what he has said as a candidate.
I think Americans appreciate a commander-in-chief who demonstrates strength, shows strength, and takes decisive action. Think about contrast the president's actions. What took place 2 days ago? What took place with Midnight Hammer when he stopped Iran? Contrast that with the previous administration. Contrast that with Joe Biden led a Chinese spy balloon fly clear across the country and then shot it down. Do you think President Trump would allow that? I think the American people appreciate the fact that he demonstrates strength and he takes decisive action for the benefit of Americans.
You talk about drugs, and here is something that President Trump did. After the former president of Honduras went through the American judicial process, was found guilty, was sentenced for a whole bunch of really bad things with regard to sending drugs into the U.S., poisoning American children, as you would say. The president pardoned him. How is that consistent with going in?
The president's clear about this, I think, in his press conference. The pardon power, by the way, is exclusive to the president. They can exercise it however they darn well want.
Should he?
And he exercised it that way, and he said he thought that the Biden administration treated this individual, the former president, in an unfair fashion, and so he chose to pardon him. President Biden issued pardons for preemptive pardons for people in the January 6th committee. He issued pardon for his family. So this is a power that our Constitution gives exclusively to the president. They can exercise it how they choose.
Let me ask you really quickly, because Maduro is in New York, and he is expected to, maybe as soon as tomorrow, as Monday, to have a hearing. Are you comfortable with Nicholas Maduro being tried through the American judicial system? Should he have the same rights as American citizens?
Yeah, I think that's why he's being tried in our system. Our system is the best in history, the best on the planet. Of course, that's the best system. And that's where the indictment, the 5-year arrest warrant, came from the Southern District of New York. Jay Clayton signed I read the indictment yesterday, 25 pages. This guy's engaged in all kinds of bad behavior, had a 5-year arrest warrant, was not recognized as the head of the state, ran a narco-terrorist criminal operation, and was cozying up to Iran and China, and he was doing it in our hemisphere. which is just wrong. And so the idea that he's now being brought to justice, I think, is a darn good thing. And I think most Americans see it that way. And they appreciate the decisive action from their commander-in-chief, our president, President Trump, as particularly contrasted with what we saw from Joe Biden, who let a Chinese spy balloon fly clear across the country before he even shot it down. I think you would have shot it down before it went across the country, and I know President Trump would have.
So the main attack line against Donald Trump and the whole Venezuela business is that he's some type of hypocrite, because he's always out there saying that, yes, he wants to have peace. He doesn't want forever wars. He doesn't want to trade American lives and treasure for some type of foreign incursion, okay? The Democrats are the ones who are actually being the hypocrites, because they were the ones actually calling for the end of the Maduro regime. And don't forget, even Joe Biden himself had a $25 million bounty placed on Maduro because nobody recognized his presidency as being legitimate. There was an election. Maduro lost handily, and then he said, you know what? I'm going to stay in power. And then all of the politicians lined up to do what they always do. They condemn without actually taking action. But this is where Donald Trump is different, as Jim Jordan points out. When Donald Trump says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Whether it's making tax cuts permanent in the big, beautiful bill, whether it's closing the border and having mass deportations, whether it's going after violent criminals, whether, of course, it's keeping men out of women's sports, whether it's bringing down gas prices by allowing America to drill more oil, whether, of course, it's stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. These are all things that Donald Trump talked about and promised he would do. And guess what? Promises delivered. And let's go ahead and contrast that with former regimes, with the Biden regime specifically, whereas Jim Jordan points out, yes, Joe Biden allowed a Chinese spy balloon to fly over the entirety of America and then shot it down after it had completed its mission. What's the difference in stances here? Donald Trump is not going to allow a foreign nation to be a threat to this country. And by the way, as I highlighted in my video yesterday, Venezuela was in fact trafficking cocaine into America, something Donald Trump has now stopped. Venezuela did seize all of the oil production equipment from several of America's big oil producers. And yes, that's something that Donald Trump is talking about getting back, something apparently that Dana Bash doesn't really like either. And also Venezuela had cozied up to Islamic terrorists, right? They are living in Venezuela and training and, of course, becoming part of the drug trade, part of the oil trade. Okay, so all of this is stuff that is happening basically on our back door. And America First also involves keeping America safe from all of these threats. There's enough instability and problems in the world that we don't need to have them this close to home. And taking out someone like Maduro, who all of the Democrats, by the way, thought was illegitimate and wanted taken out as well, falls in line with all of that. Now, of course, as far as being tried in New York City, this is the only thing that has me scared, because New York City is such a leftist place where their TDS is so strong that I have no doubt that Maduro will most likely be acquitted simply because people hate Donald Trump. All right. So that, of course, has me worried. I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's what I kind of see in the future about all this. And of course, the trial apparently is going to have to take place in New York City because that's where the indictment came down on. So all of that put aside, I think Donald Trump, yes, is following MAGA, following America First by keeping this country safe from neighboring countries who actually have a very ill intent towards us. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it.